Over the last century, the way we think about management has been completely turned on its head. We've gone from seeing companies as these predictable, well-oiled machines to viewing them as complex, living things. So let's dive into how we got from point A to point B.
And I want you to start with this question. Just think about it for a second. The best boss you ever had, were they an architect with a perfect top-down plan for everything? Or were they more like a gardener, kind of creating the right environment and then letting things grow? That question right there is the core tension we're going to unpack.
All right, so let's rewind the clock to the early 20th century. This was the era of the management machine. The whole idea was that you could engineer a business for maximum efficiency, just like you'd engineer a steam engine or an assembly line. The name of the game was perfection and predictability.
And this is basically the blueprint for that machine. A super rigid pyramid. You've got the executives up top, doing all the big picture thinking. And then down at the bottom, you have everyone else, whose job was pretty simple. Follow orders and get the tasks done. It was clear, it was simple, it was all about hierarchy.
The philosophy, the operating system that powered this whole machine was called scientific management. And its pioneer, a guy named Frederick Winslow Taylor, had this belief that management wasn't some kind of art, it was a pure science. He was convinced that every single task could be broken down, measured, and optimized to be as efficient as humanly possible.
So what this really boils down to is that the whole organization was seen as just a collection of standard, interchangeable parts. Workers were trained for one very specific job, managers did the thinking, and it was pretty much assumed that money was the only thing that really motivated people. It was all about control.
But then, something started to shift. A really big shift. Researchers started realizing that the cogs in this big machine were, they were people. And it turns out, people are just a little bit more complicated than gears and levers.
This whole revolution in thinking really kicked off with things like the famous Hawthorne studies. Researchers like Elton Mayo discovered something that was, frankly, mind-blowing for the time. A worker's attitude and their relationships with their coworkers had a huge impact on how much they got done. It wasn't just about the paycheck. It was about how people felt.
And this just completely flipped the script. The old machine view saw workers as tools that you paid for, but this new human view saw them as social beings who are motivated by things like recognition, a sense of belonging, and purpose. This was a total game changer.
And this new focus on what really makes people tick was captured perfectly by Abraham Maslow's famous pyramid. He showed that, people need safety and security, but once those basic needs are met, we're all driven by higher-level stuff, belonging to a group, feeling respected, and reaching our full potential. All of a sudden, management wasn't just about handing out a paycheck, it was about tapping into these much deeper motivations.
Okay, so you've got this evolution in thinking happening. But here's the thing. At the exact same time, the world itself was just changing at this incredible speed. And that old rigid pyramid structure, it just couldn't keep up.
Think about it. In the 60s, you have these insanely complex aerospace projects that needed totally new ways of working together. Then in the 80s, globalization hits, and suddenly companies had to be way faster and more competitive. And then, of course, the internet comes along and just rewrites all the rules, connecting teams and customers instantly across the globe. The pyramid was definitely starting to crumble.
So what do you do? Well, in response, these new, way more flexible structures started to pop up. You got matrix organizations, where people could report to 2 different managers to handle complex projects. You had networked teams that just cut right across the old silos. And then you had virtual organizations, which took it even further, with a tiny core team coordinating this huge network of outside partners. A perfect modern example is a company like Airbnb. It's totally boundaryless, right? It doesn't own any hotels. It just uses technology to connect a massive global network of hosts and travelers. A business model like that would have been absolutely unimaginable under that old top-down machine structure.
And all of this whole journey towards flexibility and adaptation brings us right to the dominant management philosophy of our time. And that's the Agile mindset. So what is Agile really? At its heart, it's about throwing out that old idea of having one giant, perfect master plan. Instead, it's all about breaking work down into small pieces and then constantly adapting based on what you learn from the real world. You're trying to test, learn, and improve over and over again. And the engine that drives Agile is this really simple but incredibly powerful loop. You build a little something, you test it, you learn from what happened, and then you repeat that cycle again and again. It's all about continuous improvement in a world where, let's be honest,
you can't possibly know all the answers when you start. And the reasons companies are so drawn to this are pretty clear. Organizations that go agile are just way better at handling changing priorities. The whole team can actually see what's going on, they get things to market faster, and they build this culture of constantly getting better.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? We've journeyed from that rigid machine all the way to this adaptive living organism. So to help tie this all together, I want to show you a fantastic framework that can help you figure out where your own company fits in this story.
This is called the Competing Values Framework. And it might look a little academic, but it's actually super simple. It just maps organizations on two key scales. The up and down axis is all about focus. Are you more focused inward on your own people and processes or outward on the market? And the side-to-side axis is about structure. Do you value stability and control, or are you all about flexibility and change?
And when you plot those out, you get these 4 distinct types of company cultures. You've got the hierarchy down in the bottom left. That's our stable, internally focused machine. Then you have the market culture, which is focused on competing externally. The clan culture is like a big family, focused on collaboration inside. And up in the top right, you have the adhocracy, which thrives on flexibility and innovation.
What's so cool about this is you can actually plot the entire history we've just talked about right onto this framework. For a long time, the emphasis was heavily on that hierarchy, control. Then it shifted towards market and clan styles, which value competition and collaboration. But today, the most successful companies are leaning hard into adhocracy, that flexible, innovative style that really defines that modern, agile organism.
That really brings us right back to you. Where does your team or your company fit on this map? Are you a well-oiled machine or more of an adaptive garden? Are you built for stability or built for change? Because figuring out where you are is the very first step to understanding where the future of work is going.